Well, it happened the day I never thought would come.
34.
34. 34 guilty charges.
All 34.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing.
It is almost unbelievable. Like, I never expected that.
Yeah.
But,
So we have our resident expert, military guy on the phone, Jim Foley.
And one of our favorite guests.
Yes, one of our favorite guests. How you doing, Jim?
I'm terrific. Thank you guys for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah, it was a great day the other day, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. It was really surprising, shocking. Even though there's been such anticipation for this moment, that he's gotten away with things like this for so long, it really was shocking to see it come to fruition like this.
Yeah, I mean, I was a doubter. I was just like, no, there's going to be at least one Trump supporter on there that's going to just not agree and have a hung jury. I mean, that's the way I thought it was going to go.
That's because there were two on there, right? There was at least two.
So.
I think there was a lady and a guy, and they had said in the interview part that one of them was like a fan of Truth Social or whatnot. And so, yeah, I thought, oh, we're in trouble.
And I think the difference is, for one, we set ourselves up to, just not be so anticipation of the results that we kind of say, well, it's probably going to go off track. Spare yourself the anxiety that surrounds it. And also, as somebody that has been selected to a jury, was a jury foreman myself in a drug case, one thing that I experienced was truth is undeniable. When you're in a courtroom and they're presenting facts and the defense has an opportunity to rebut those facts, the truth comes out. And even if you're somebody that's politically biased or don't like these people or do like those, it really is almost impossible to set aside your own conscience and do the wrong thing. So I think that's why juries are so successful. Our way of our judicial system and the process we use is so effective and has lasted this 250 years for that reason, is people tend to do the right thing when faced with it in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole feedback, I was going back and forth with a friend who, said, well, this was a sham trial and stuff like that. No, it was a jury of his peers, regardless of what the motives, if the judge even had motives to go after Trump. It was the jury that decided this.
That was like the saddest for me was, them sitting there being all pissed about the judge. And I'm like, the saddest part is the fact that we have so many grown-ass adult Americans who have no idea how the judicial system works.
Right.
It's like, that's what was probably the most upsetting to me.
Well, the intention here is really not just to discount this one case where this was a fixed trial or a witch hunt, as they've categorized it. It's really to tear down the entire judicial system. They're loosening all the nuts and bolts throughout the entire system to delegitimize it. So really, they don't need to prove to anybody that this was a sham. What they need to do is get people to lose confidence.
Yeah.
And one of the things I discovered is having conversations with even like-minded people that thought that he should be held to account, that the evidence was overwhelming. They still really kind of poo-pooed the I don't think the system will work. They're probably going to let him go anyway. And they've really disenfranchised Americans from having faith in their own government and their own system. And that is the goal. That's what the current RNC, the Trump campaign, what their ambition is get people to give up caring about democracy.
Yeah, and that was where I was. I was losing faith that the system would actually get him on something.
It's sad too, because what you're saying, like, hits home with me too. Like, I was talking to my dad about it, and I couldn't believe my dad going, yeah, well, now that the Democrats have done this, they better be prepared for what's going to happen to them. And I'm like, how can you even say that? How do you not believe in everyone should be held accountable when you call me every day because of ridiculous shit that you see on the news? Like, he called me earlier that day to tell me about a 14-year-old who murdered his dad, stole his dad's car that was only like a mile from where my dad lives, and headed off to Vegas, and then was sitting there saying, well, he's going to now get 25 years in prison. So you can sit there and tell me that, but a former president shouldn't be held to account? No.
Yeah.
You've got to believe in the justice system for everyone.
Yeah, and tell the truth, that judge was so lenient on Trump with the gag order, and he would constantly talk shit about the judge on the courthouse steps every day after he left. Now, if I got in trouble in Kingman and had to go before a judge, and I immediately went out, turned on this podcast, and talked shit about that judge, I'd be thrown in jail.
Yeah, your ass would be in jail.
Yeah.
Especially if you were inciting violence against the judge or his family or, witnesses and jurors. That was really what he was looking to do, is put the fear into people to where they wouldn't testify against him or wouldn't, have a judgment against him. And he failed at that. Now, I give that all props credit to Judge Merchan, because he was so cool about everything, so non-emotional. He did his job like he was supposed to, without coming to anger even. And I think Trump went out of his way to do that, to really get the judge to use some sort of emotional response. And then he has some sort of idea to how to have an appeal. But the judge was seamless when it came to doing his job, following the letter of the law, and controlling the courtroom under some really tenuous conditions.
Plus, I think the judge was smart, too, in knowing, I really got the feeling that Trump was trying to get his ass thrown in jail because it's just another fundraiser for him. I think he was really wanting to, and I don't think the judge was almost like, I'm not going to give you what you want either, but I'm going to keep warning you. Yeah.
And it's not just a fundraiser. It's not just for money. That is usually something that a response that his base has to things going against him. They tend to send him money, and that's true. But what they're really hoping to do is delegitimize the entire legal system, which is really lined up against him now with the January 6th trial, with the stolen records, national security information trial, all that stuff coming. He needs his followers, his base, his cult to take that next step towards violence. And
really
what he's hoping to do is get himself thrown in jail, and then they attack the jail or something and really push. Because if his people are not primed enough for violence when it comes time for the next trial or for the election, then he's going to lose this whole thing. He's going to lose his freedom, and he's going to have to face accountability.
Yeah. Do you think he'll actually serve jail time? I don't think he'll do that, but...
Not for this one.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, the judge wouldn't be out of bounds for giving it, but I think that the DOJ and the New York court and everybody else doesn't want to blindly just, put our country into this spiral of violence or something when it's really not necessary. There's a lot more they could do to contain him, and we need to get to the next trials, the next phase of the trials, and keeping in mind, keeping the balance that we don't want American citizens to lose confidence in our judicial system. We need to maintain that, taking the high road and not doing things that would appear to be spiteful or could be spun that way. I think that's important.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
but so now he's going to appeal this, right? Does that appeal, do you know if that comes before or after the sentencing? After sentencing, which is, July 11th?
July 11th at 10 a.m. So he's, and I think that's only, 2 or 3 days before the RNC, the Republican convention.
Now,
so that's really going to have some enthusiasm, effects there.
Now, just hypothetically, though, if he was thrown in jail, does he go to jail before the appeal is heard?
Usually not. In cases where there isn't violent crime, you can actually, pending appeal, you stay out on bond. That it would be typical, and especially in a case of a celebrity politician like himself, I don't see him, waiting in jail. It will have to run its course through all the appeals, but even his own lawyer said yesterday in interviews that the appeals don't look very promising. Judge Merchan did such a great job. The prosecution didn't step over any lines, and the evidence was So they really don't have, according to Trump's defense team, they don't really have an avenue for appeal. And that's something that now he's relying on. I've just got to win the election so I could overthrow the judgments and litigation against him. That's really where he's at.
Right, and the appeal would be most likely not heard till after the election.
Probably. I mean, between July and, he has 30 days to apply for appeal from the time that he's sentenced. That's the New York law. So he only has until August 11th to apply for an appeal, then whenever the appellate court decides to hear it. But that could happen before the election, that he could lose that appeal. Now, he does get to take that from the state appellate court all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, if he can. But they don't have to take it up either. This is kind of a closed case. Unless they assign him immunity, he really doesn't have any hope of that.
Well, he is going to appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court, though.
Of course. Even if
he put some of those people on there.
Yeah. That's his team.
He's like, I'm going to roll the dice on that one.
Those are his boys.
Yeah.
They owe him one.
All right.
Yeah, he thinks in those terms. Everything's
for
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
If he gave you something, if he gave you a seat as an ambassador or a Supreme Court justice, he has every expectation that you work for him. That's
everything's a business deal with him. Everything's the art of the deal.
Well, and I guess that's...
most fearful of. If he does gain power, he's already said that he's going to get rid of up to as many 50,000 federal employees at the leadership level, senior executive service.
Oh, yeah.
He's
cleaning house.
And if he does that, what's he going to do to the entire federal service? Is he going to renegotiate our pension by just saying it's cut in half? Those are things that he has a likelihood of doing just from his pattern, him deciding he's going to fix a budget and cut something that will help the taxes. And those pesky federal employees' pension is getting in the way of that. So there's nothing that's out of limits for Trump. And there's a lot of people that should be afraid of that.
Yeah. Now, where's your level of anxiety? I think what happened, it goes in Biden's favor to independent voters. Do you think he really has a good chance? Because he is leading in most polls still.
I don't put a lot of stock in the polls. For one, I don't think American voters are that fickle. The people that say they're voting for Trump, they're not going to change their mind in the next news cycle. And the people that are opposed to Trump, like myself, from the day he announced, I just thought this man is the worst thing for us. He didn't win anybody like me over. He certainly hasn't put any effort into winning anybody over outside of the base. So I don't think he really has a chance. I think the polls aren't really reflecting that 20% of the primary Republican vote has gone to somebody other than Trump, mostly to Haley. So if these people are voting for a candidate that has already dropped out of the race, that is not a good sign. And like I said, he hasn't done anything to bring independents more, closer to him, and he certainly hasn't made any effort to convert any Democrats. So he's working with less people than when he lost last time. So I really don't think his chances of winning an election really stand. Not to say that we're not under a threat of him doing something like he did on January 6th, trying to overthrow the election and delegitimize our democracy. That's still very much a real threat.
Yeah.
But as far as him winning a free and fair election, I just don't see it. It's not in there.
Yeah, well, let's not forget his recent thing to try to win over the libertarians either. That didn't go so well.
When you get booed out of the room by the people that don't really particularly like government.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got his number. They know that overreach and also women voters in general. Man, he's gone out of his way to attack women's rights, the reproductive stuff. And I really see that as him losing votes from what he had last time. Here you are up against the same guy who smoked you. 82 million, 84 million to 74. That was a big split. Biden won by 8 million votes. I think you're going to see that widen, and I think you're going to see a few states that didn't go for Biden last time, I think will this time. I think he's really lost. His magic is gone. That charm he had over people, I think, is really faded, tarnished.
Except for the diehards. I mean, I'm sure that Kingman, Mojave County will overwhelmingly go every year.
No doubt.
70%, is
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Republican and MAGA. And, I mean, if your congressman is Gosar, that speaks to where the people stand. And, there's pockets of this country that are going to stay that way, and they'll be defined and say the whole thing was a fraud. But they're not gonna win people over that. That's gonna fade away.
Yeah. It's not enough for him to win. I mean, I don't think so. Hopefully.
I don't know.
It's the only thing I'm really worried about right now is the young folks, like, because they're very upset with the Israel Palestine thing. Which, I mean, I understand their point of view, but I'm like, I'm not going to pretend I'm not worried about that part.
I think that's a factor, but I also give credit to our young Americans, especially around the universities, that they're intelligent enough not to cut off their nose to spite their face. If you're unhappy with the way Biden is managing the arms sales to Israel and a ceasefire, helping negotiate that or being a little more firm about that, well, those same people have to realize that if they help elect Donald Trump or don't vote for Biden and Trump wins, that he is going to just allow Israel to bulldoze through Gaza. They're just going to kill everybody. So if you're somebody that's pro-Palestinian, their movement, their plight, really hiring Donald Trump is the absolute worst thing you could do as a solution.
Right.
I know. That's why I'm a little baffled by it. I'm like,
when he helped move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that was a real slap in the face, to the Palestinians. And, he went out of his way to empower Israel to suppress and oppress the Palestinians further than they already do. It was a bad move.
Well, hopefully they remember that, come election day about the whole,
Well, I mean, I don't think younger voters are. The younger people,
they're college students. You would think they'd be paying attention to it. Like
you would hope.
You would think they would take that in mind, though, because that's an important piece of information right there. Jim, you need to do an ad with that information in there. Hey, don't forget about this, guys.
Well, typically, younger generations, going back through history, they are biased in a way, and the information they receive is kind of one-sided. It's a lot of emotion. The Vietnam War protests and all of that. They weren't stepping back and looking at the big picture as to U.S. international interest or any of that stuff. They were looking at like, hey, my friends are getting drafted into the army and they're not coming home. So as a young person looking out for your peers and your generation, it became very, one-sided argument within that. It was probably for the best, not poo-pooing that movement. But we're in that same thing. Young people tend to focus on what their grievance is and the information that supports it. And they don't really explore that counterpoint or a balanced perspective.
Yeah, and who knows what the news cycle will be 6 months from now.
Yeah.
I can't tell one day from the next. I mean, it's like a fire hose. Every day I turn on the news and Donald Trump has said something new and, declared that we're going to allow these people to run over Europe and, they're going to have to pay us more money as extortion. Every day is something that I just thought I would never hear.
Yeah. And like if he did get elected, he'd probably pull us out of the United Nations and he would let Putin do whatever he wanted to go into Poland and.
He's definitely signaling a isolationist type of an idea and making alliances with other world dictators and authoritarian strongmen. He's definitely signaled that. He speaks praises. He meets with them in private. There's a real danger of that. And I don't think most Americans really get the scope of how much that risks their freedom and future and your grandkids having a same or similar life that you did. If he gets power again, if he does really actually overthrow our government, it's not going to be anything like people think it's going to be. Even to the victors, they're not going to get the spoils that they think they are.
Yeah, well, and that boils down to a lot of voters, like they call it the dinner table issues, like, oh, well, the price of milk is so much more than it was 2 years ago or whatever, but they don't look at the bigger picture. And they also don't look at, well, why is it, why did Kroger have 34% profits in the last quarter if it's not price gouging?
That's very true. I think people, but you have to be somewhat already predisposed, biased in that way to think that, well, milk's too expensive and I can't afford eggs, so I'm going to vote for a different president. I just don't think people do that on a really an objective level. I think you already have to be biased, and you were just looking for an excuse to justify your support for Trump. So
right,
eggs are expensive.
Yeah.
right, and the same people that use that talking point about the groceries. He broke the internet with donations, something like 54 million since his verdict came out. So people have money.
Yeah, if you've got money to send to Trump instead of buying your milk, somebody's lying.
That's the other thing is we're spending money. People have confidence in the economy, so the money's being spent, and it's really helping our economy. So things are expensive, and a lot of families are impacted by that. I try to remember, my wife and I both are professionals. We make good money. We're empty nesters. We don't have a lot of bills. So, I don't have the same impact that a lot of younger Americans have. And also, I'm seeing the return on my investments. People complain about, well, look how much everything costs. Well, those are profits. And what's going on with those profits is people that are, have stock capital, equity. We're making money. I made 24.8% on my investments last year. That's a huge amount of money.
That's pretty good.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, it depends on economically where you stand. If you, have a fixed income or, as an older retired person, or you're somebody that's young and just getting started and got a family, things can be tight. Things are a little tight right now. But on the other hand, if you're somebody that is in the middle class, upper middle class, man, you're making money faster than you ever could.
Yeah, and if you look at everything that Trump touted with economic figures back before COVID happened, Biden's beating those numbers now on it. But if you listen to a certain news channel, oh, we're in the toilet, we're a third world country.
Didn't his sons put that out there too?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
text.
Yeah.
One of them. I don't know if it was Beavis or Butthead, but yeah.
And I'm picking up that same vibe, that they're really trying to convince people that they're in this doomsday thing. And I think people gravitate towards nicer times. You always get those people in the complainer class. But as things are getting better and you're taking your family on vacation and, things are improving in your family, you just quit bitching about stuff. You quit listening to that TV channel that's trying to bring you down. Things aren't that bad.
Yeah,
definitely. So what about the upcoming trials, though? God, I mean, these are going to be way more serious. This one was just a walk in the park compared to what's upcoming.
Classy felonies, all 34 of them, which is kind of your lowest category of felonies. They don't necessarily warrant any significant jail time, unless you're calling the judge names and stuff. But the next trials are real serious, and not only for the legal consequences, but for that national conversation. People have interest in these things when this man's on trial, even if you think he's being persecuted. It garners people's attention. And when that happens, and when this evidence comes out, which is fairly indisputable, especially the things that you watched on January 6th and with your own eyes,
right.
When that stuff comes out as part of the legal record, he's going to lose a lot of enthusiasm. He's going to lose support in voters, which were the independents. I mean, his base will be hardened by it, but they'll also be scolded a little bit by it. That once that information is public, you look like a jerk flying a Trump flag. So I really do think that that's the biggest objective of trying to stall these through the Supreme Court and having Judge Cannon down there in Florida, making all these really weird rulings trying to keep this from going to trial before the election. And the reason is, if this information comes out in a trial, he's really going to lose a lot of his political momentum because of it.
Well,
and possibly go to jail. So there's that.
yeah. I mean, this one might not warrant jail time, but the other one, which is just treason, the classified documents is just...
It's bigger than people realize. Most people are familiar with what happened in the whole January 6th attempt to overthrow the election. But when it comes to the national security violations, he's been charged with 32 counts of espionage. Well, espionage doesn't mean that you have that classified document in a box in your bathroom at your cheap ass hotel. What it means is you showed it to other people. You've compromised that information. And here's something else that a lot of folks don't realize, especially non-military or non-Department of Defense people don't get, is documents like this that Donald Trump had at his hotel. Nothing like this has ever been breached before. Nothing in American history of this magnitude. Most of those documents are seen by probably less than 10 people in the world ever. Nobody will ever know those documents exist. Now our enemies do. He's physically given copies of this stuff to the Saudis, to the Russians. He's really, really committed acts of treason against the United States. This is a bigger deal than people know.
Really?
The biggest security breach and divulged records, secret information in the history of the United States, by far.
Which baffles me that a lot of military people still support him.
Me too.
Yeah,
I mean, around enough people that think this is a good idea, and I just don't see it. Because when you're at work, and there's some really competent people in the military and the Department of Defense. I mean, I'm constantly amazed when somebody in a leadership position comes in and speaks to us and tells us, here's what we're going to do, here's the mission. They're never, goofballs or idiots, or they're really top form people. They are. And I try to imagine somebody like Donald Trump coming up in front of a group of us and speaking the way he does, and calling one of the women in the office fat, and making fun of that guy's hair. The kind of person he is, I don't understand why military people would ever find him, entertaining or attractive or anything. He's really a monster. He's a bore.
I know. It's almost like, do they really believe that he's a patriot because he hugged the flag that one time? I mean...
Yeah, well, anybody that's a, military guy, you don't walk up and hug the flag.
Right?
Really
You're not supposed to be touching it.
Yeah. That's not supposed to be something that you do.
Okay.
But I mean, the regular folks, regular citizens, though, I'm like, it's almost like they believe he's a patriot because he tried to make out with the flag, man. I'm like...
Yeah. And he's somebody that has no knowledge of the Constitution. He has, even after serving as a term as the president, he really doesn't understand what, even as a common citizen would. If you asked him to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, he couldn't do it.
I don't think he learned anything from being in office.
So, well, he's learned things, but none of them.
But I mean, yeah, not about like the way our country is supposed to work,
Yeah.
Well, he's found all the loopholes for it, and that
Yeah.
the teachings of Roy Cohen in his upbringing. And Roy Cohen showed him how to exploit all the holes in our legal system, because there are holes. And
Right.
Mostly people aren't able to, they don't have the means or whatever, but he does. And he's certainly found every single way to punch holes in it and stop cases from going forward. And I didn't realize how vulnerable our system was until Donald J. Trump showed up as the defendant. But he certainly has shown us how fragile that is.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't work Thursday.
Did you think the country was this divided though before Trump came along? Was Trump just the catalyst for it, or was it always?
So. I think he's somebody who's naturally good at reading people, manipulating people, exploiting their fears and stuff, and he's done that like nobody else could. But I think even during the Obama years, that was really being amplified. Calling Obama a non-citizen, referring to him as a Kenyan and things like that. And Donald Trump had a lot to do with that. He's the one promoting that birther information. So I think that's really when our divisions became just unmanageable. When people started hating each other. That's about the time I started seeing people wear shirts that say, I'd rather be with a Russian than a liberal. And people resented, became, and that's why Donald Trump now speaks in terms of Democrats and liberals as vermin that should be rooted out of the country. And that's why he's doing that. He's trying to make that animosity towards other people.
Right, and people can't understand why on social media I don't give Trump any respect at all. Yeah. And they're like, well, they're all the same. I'm like, no, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. In any way, shape, or form, are they all the same?
Right.
Yeah. Only one guy, only one side wants to take away your voting rights, and your freedom of speech, and your freedom to peacefully assemble. I mean, they want to shoot into crowds or suppress those things through violence. Trump has promised to launch the military to put down any movements against him if he wins. He's not going to put up with the pussy hat movement like he had to last time, the day after his inauguration. He's gonna have the army go out there and shoot rubber bullets into those people and tear gas. So people don't realize that he's going to take away your rights, everybody's rights. Doesn't matter if you were on his side or supported him. Once we lose that, once we lose our Constitution to him, what are you going to do to get it back?
Well, yeah, and it's scary. Like, probably about 30% of the country wants that. They want that dictator.
And that's because they don't realize the consequences. To those people, I say this. If your day of victory comes and he's going to put all these brown people in concentration camps and get ready to deport people and re-educate the gay people because they're going to need that, right? Who's going to do that? Who's going to enforce that? Who's going to run the camps? Well, I know who is, just like they did in Germany. They're going to conscript people to do that. They're going to take your children, your sons, and they're going to conscript them into the military, and they're going to have to go and do that dirty work that nobody's really thinking about. For him to have to achieve what he wants in this white utopian nationalism Christian thing, is the other people have to go away. That's just part of it. That's fundamental to it, is you can't have all these black people and brown people, and they're not going to be submissive. They're not going to just start calling you Yassa and sitting in the back of the bus again. So when those people get uppity, when they resist, when they tell you, I don't have to listen to you, well, then you got to take it to the next phase, and that is enforcing that these people are second-class citizens and you will not speak back. Well, who's going to do that? Your kids are. That's who's going to do that. And if you've ever been to like the Holocaust Museum and explored the idea of what those Germans, those young men that were assigned to that duty of disposing of these unwanted human beings, that ruined a lot of those people. Can you imagine being assigned to murder duty? So, this really has a bigger social impact than just, oh, yay, the white people won. This is really going to be a horrible thing that they haven't thought past the day of the inauguration. They don't think about what's coming next, or what has to come next.
Right. And, I mean, this isn't only about getting Biden elected. This goes to Congress and the Senate, too, because if Mike Johnson, I hate to share the name with that person, if he remains Speaker of the House, he could potentially not certify the results of the election.
Well, they've actually passed the Electoral College Reform Act in 2021 after the January 6th attack. So now that's been structured to where a vice president can't just go in there and be like, yeah, deal's off, or something like that. You can't just have a member of the House or the Senate just say, we're not going to do this. It's really a ceremonial process. So I think that's been shored up where they can't use that same exact playbook. But, there's a lot of things that the Speaker of the House can do to corrupt the process and to, stall everything and make everything go offline. There's a lot he can do that's wrong. And also, people need to keep in mind that he's second in line for the presidency. If something happens to the president and the vice president, He's now in charge of the whole thing. So which means he can pardon Trump, which means so there's a lot of incentive for the people in the MAGA camp to want to elevate him to the presidency if needed. Let's put it that way.
Scary
shit.
Very scary.
Fucking.
One terrorist attack could change everything. Like, that could change who's in charge of America tomorrow.
Did you see the movie Civil War yet? You haven't.
I have not.
You should. It's a little too realistic. It's a little too close to what's really happening, and what it would look like if it did happen.
But I'm sorry, I really do have to agree with Bill Maher, because I said the same thing. I go, in what world is California and Texas ever in the same sentence together without the word hate in there somewhere? No fucking way.
Between us, yeah.
It was, the actors were very good, but the story, they could have done so much better. Like, they didn't, yeah.
I think maybe the point was to try not to make it a documentary, try to make it more like a fantasy but we are too close, and there are too many similarities to us decaying into that, where people are getting so mad that they're willing to pick up a rifle against their own country and countrymen. And you hear that being expressed in the former president's statements. He really is making these, encouraging his people to take that next step towards violence, and promoting that you and your family aren't safe from these people, as if we're left no other choice but to resort to violence. That's really what the call has become.
Well, in here, there's militias out in Golden Valley, and they're just ready for it.
Oh, yeah.
They want it.
Oh, yeah, they're everywhere. They're not just in Golden Valley.
Well, I'm just saying this.
All over the place.
Really grew. Right now, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the FBI, all those branches that are keeping our country safe, they've identified the white nationalists, these groups of militias, as the number one threat. Domestic terrorism is the number one threat against the United States. It has been for a long time, since like 2005 to be accurate.
You mean it's not everybody pouring over the border?
Yeah, one would think, right?
We already did a border special.
Crimes committed by people that are immigrants is significantly lower than domestic citizens' crime rate. So, while that is easy to get people fired up and fearmonger over that, realistically, I live on the border. I live maybe 12 miles from the international border with Mexico. And I've been here 25 years. And I have no idea what those people are talking about when they talk about the open border and fearing for their lives. And I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah,
that isn't happening.
You mean they're not marching across the front lawn every day?
No, not at all.
Oh.
So we now have confirmation from the San Diego border, too. Okay, this is good. Because, I visited 3 of the border spots. I had already been to one. The only other one that I'm going to go to later is the Yuma border. But, nothing going on. No thousands of people flooding over. Nowhere.
No.
Nothing happening.
They've got some issues in a few places. And immigration really went up in 2019. And that was in response to actions by President Trump, international incidents and what he had going on in Central America and what he was doing with immigration policy here in the United States. That motivated a lot of people from Central America and South Mexico to migrate up towards our border. And then when COVID happened, that changed everything. That changed the laws, too, where he was able to install this, what was it, Title 47 or something like that, I forget the exact number, but he put that law on, which is during emergency measures, they can close the border, those kind of things. And they had to lift that eventually. We do have laws, and you can't just stay under this emergency medical situation. So,
especially when it was just the flu the whole time.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
According to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Nothing a little horse dewormer wouldn't take care of.
Yeah.
But they've certainly created a problem with the immigration thing to cultivate, votes. Really, that's the number one thing for every Republican I meet is the open border. When's Joe Biden going to do something about it? Well, they've lost all that ability to make that statement since they shot down that immigration bill that was put forward board. It was a very conservative leaning. It had nothing in there for the Democrats. It was all focused on just solving the problem, handling, this mass of people that are applying for asylum and stuff. How do we process these people in a more economical manner? And they shot it down. They don't want this problem fixed.
Well, and it was Trump that shot it down.
Very much so. He took full credit for that. He went on the news and said, "I did that. I told them we don't want to fix this." So I believe him. He has that kind of influence and power over the Republicans. So I think that that's going to stay a problem until the Democrats just become a majority. And it's done for the Republicans if that ever happens, because we'll pass, voter rights bills that they won't be able to restrict voting or gerrymander anymore, and you won't have to worry about Republicans running the competitive race until they change their ways. Well, you're not going to be able to run on that hatred.
And that's why I don't understand the GOP. Like, they almost know, like, they're becoming dinosaurs and they're going to die off eventually, and the voter base is going to get more progressive. And I don't understand why the Republican Party doesn't lean more into that to be able to keep power. But instead, they back Trump fully on it.
And I think there's the desperation of their religious leanings more than anything else. The people that want it to be like a Christian nation, they want to ban abortion and force people to recognize their religion and stuff. That's really their motivation. And you just have to wait for those people to die off. And they've recognized quite some time ago, that's why they started gerrymandering and the red map thing, is they know that they don't have the will of the people behind them. They don't really have the voting base. They've been losing presidential elections every single year. I think they've won one out of the last 8 where they actually won the popular vote. So going back all the way into Clinton's time, the Republicans have not been competitive. And for that reason, they're abandoning democracy. That's why you see this big pull towards, we don't need to worry about voting anymore. We need to just have one day of voting. It has to be in person. They don't want mail-in or drop boxes. And the reason is democracy doesn't work for them. And they're not going to change their ways. They're not going to become more progressive or something more attractive to young voters. They don't want to be. They want to have religion and racism and just be in charge.
Yeah, they flat out said it. There's been some that have said, "I don't want democracy."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to start hearing more and more of that message to get American people comfortable with it and repeating it. Because right now, most of our citizens are apprehensive about cashing in the whole Constitution and their right to vote and our democracy. But it's really starting to work on them. And I think these legal problems that Trump has also are helping that. Look how the system's rigged against him. Our justice system is broken, and it's being used as a cudgel against our guy. So for that reason, they're like, well, we may as well throw the whole thing in the trash and start over again. So that's where they're taking the party right now.
Mm-hmm. Scary.
Scary. And the only thing we can do, and we've had a few episodes lately where we've had younger people on, and being Pride Month and stuff like that, and trying to encourage younger people and the need to go out and vote, I found really challenging on it.
It is. I think that is a big challenge for us as a nation now, that our current youth is disenfranchised. I mean, look at all this has become just a shouting match. So if you're a young adult, who wants to step into this? You listen to your crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving table, and he's calling Hillary Clinton the C word and stuff, and it just gets so caustic that a lot of young people are turned off by getting involved in our way of government. And that's a scary thing, that they've really literally done a campaign against these people to make them just think, this is a bunch of garbage anyway. It's just people yelling at one another about things that don't matter to me. And I'm sad to say it's having an effect. It's winning.
Yeah.
But in a counterpoint, these attacks on the LGBTQ community, these attacks on women's rights, that's having a profound effect on young people. And I think that they may have pulled the trigger a little too soon on some of those oppressing things that they wanted to do, but they're stuck in a rock and a hard place. They got to motivate their people without really sounding the alarm for the more constitutionally loyal Americans that'll stand up against it. So Trump's been trying to thread that needle, and the GOP has, but now I think I just see them taking out all the stops. Let's pick sides and let's just go for it. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, Jim, that was informative. Thank you for coming on.
Always enjoy it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always like having you.
Yeah, and when you're back in Kingman again, please come in, because I'm sure this is not an issue that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We'll be trying to understand this for many years to come. I think there will be college courses and special law degrees on this subject alone.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating time in history, though, looking at it.
It is.
It really
it's a scary
is.
time to be alive and part of this, but it is also something that I think every American owes it to themselves, their future generations, to step up and do the hard thing here.
Yeah.
To stare this right in the eye and say, no, I'm going to defend my country, not on my watch.
Yeah, and I think it's a time to look at the Constitution itself and maybe just look at certain parts of it like, okay, maybe it's not a good idea to have a convicted felon be able to get to the highest office in the country where you get the security clearance, when normally you can't even have a gun or you can't vote.
It's a huge distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe Donald J. Trump said it best during the 2016 campaign, that somebody who is indicted for a crime and currently under investigation and facing trial for this president, it's just not reasonable and would be a complete detriment to the operation of this country and the leadership of it. I have to agree with.
That's a great point. And Biden during the debate should just go up and just have sound clips on his phone. Can you respond to this, Mr. President?
I don't think that Trump will go to the debates for that reason, is because that he's facing those kind of questions. Somebody's going to lay it out on him alone on the stage, and what are you going to do? So I think he's really in a tough spot for that. I don't think he's going to be.
So you don't think he's going to debate Biden in June?
I don't think he will
2
either.
weeks before his sentencing is the first debate is scheduled, and just like you said, what's Biden going to say? Hey, how's things going? What do you expect to get in your sentencing? It's just so wide open. Giving him shit, giving him blast, and talking down to him. Hey, hold on, felon, I'm talking here. Just speak over me. It's too loaded for him to take it. And Joe Biden's kind of a witty guy. He really is.
Oh, yeah.
Throws zingers on a regular basis. So I think Trump's really screwed on, and his people don't like debates anyway. He just looks all pouty and mad, says childish things. So he's better off staying away from him, to be honest.
Yeah, he'd be really stupid to agree to still do it. I mean,
Yes, he would.
Okay, Jim. Well, we'll wrap this up. We'll let you go, get on with your day and stuff like that. But thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Till next time, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, man.
Bye.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that was informative.
I know. Always good to talk to Jim.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye,
Bye.
y'all.